afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the webinar organized by Oxfam India today, Women Economic Empowerment, a reality check in the COVID era. A very warm welcome on behalf of Oxfam India. We are organizing this webinar on 7th of May, as you can understand that it's the eve of International Women's Day. कल अंतर्राष्ट्रीय महिला दिवस है और उसके अवसर पर आज हम ये वेबिनार ऑर्गेनाइज कर रहे हैं. इसका बड़ा जो मकसद है, what we aim to do through this webinar today is to first just to let you know that Oxfam India as an organization, we have signed up to end discrimination in India. Now, in doing so, in pursuit of that, one of our strategy is to build women's leadership and, so to speak, women's entrepreneurship also. So in that context, today's discussion is mostly to understand that how the past 2 years, COVID has impacted women, and not only COVID, like the situation of women in India is always abysmal if you see the data. And then COVID has actually aggravated it. And what we intend to discuss today is that whether building grassroots women's enterprise is a way out to deal with this situation. Oxfam's own experience has been, we have worked quite a lot on building capacities of self-help groups at the rural India level. We have developed women's cooperatives. We have developed women's enterprises. But what we realize is much needs to be done here, precisely because it is so difficult to bring women in the leadership position to run enterprises and to run cooperative, because at household level and at social level, they are actually negotiating various challenging social norms. Now, it is in this context we have a fascinating panel today, and we are very proudly saying that we have a panel today. We have all women speaking to us today, and from a diverse range of sectors. So we have from academic sector, we have from grassroots leadership sector, we have from corporate. So for the next 1.5 hours, we will be having a solid conversation with all of them, trying to understand that during this era, when we are now getting into a new normal, surviving COVID in variety of forms that they are coming, whether building women's enterprise is also making women's lives more resilient in India. So having said that, I'm privileged as a moderator today to introduce a fantastic panel. First to Rosa Abraham, a very young and a senior research fellow from Azim Premji University, whose research interest has been on informal work and labor market, and she also takes great interest in understanding gender into that. I'm also privileged to introduce Archana Gargodia. Archana has been, a fascinating person, an author, a campaigner for women's empowerment, a successful entrepreneur, and of course, a national level quizzer as well. She has written quite a number of books for children. And then Archana has also been the national chair for FICCI, the medium, small, and enterprises. And then she also has been the president of Women's Wing of FICCI. We are also privileged to introduce Punam Di. पूनम दी, बहुत वेलकम, आपको स्वागत है. पूनम दी एक्चुअली भागलपुर और मुंगेर बिहार राज्य के 2 जिले में एक फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की मेंबर है, और काफी सालों से इस प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को एक्चुअली खड़ा करने में उनका बहुत बड़ा सहारा रहा है. तो उनसे आज सुनेंगे कि महिला एक ऐसे एंटरप्राइज बिल्डिंग में बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले कर सकती है. एंड ऑल्सो वेलकमिंग रिबू, who is the head of communication and brand CSR Amadeus. So without further ado, I'll now take the honor to start the conversation. The flow will be that I'll have one round of question to all the panels. शुरुआत में एक राउंड ऑफ सवाल मेरे तरफ से होगा सारे पैनलिस्ट के लिए. बीच में 2 छोटे हमारे ऑक्सफैम के काम के वीडियोस है, वो हम दिखाएंगे. We'll screen some of the 2 small videos of Oxfam's own work of enterprise building, keeping women at the center. And then we request the audience to interact with the panelists, because it's really a privilege to have 4 fantastic women in a single panel on the eve of International Women's Day. So I'll start with Rosa. Rosa, your research, you are quite a young researcher and have been doing quite a lot. So if you help us to understand the macro position a bit more. Like one, there is this context of female labor force participation rate going down, and then coupled with that, COVID really has an adverse impact of women in this country. How do you describe the whole situation? And then once you lay this out, then I'll take on to Archana to understand that what can be done about it. So over to you, Rosa.
Thank you, Archana, and thank you for the invitation. It's really a privilege to be here and to be part of this event by an institution that I greatly respect, and especially for the advocacy that you've been doing in the last few years. So thank you again. So coming to the question on women's work, so this is, at least in the academic sphere, the puzzle of women's employment is in India has engaged a lot of us. And what is the puzzle that you see? It is one, very low levels of women in the labor force. So if you look at all the working age women, so women between the ages of 15 and 65 typically, only about 20%, according to official statistics, are actually employed, that is, they are engaged in paid work. So this is already low. And what we have been observing in the last decade or so, more than that actually, is a steady decline in women's engagement in the labor force. So there's been a lot of hypotheses, a lot of theories put forward, as well as some, it's not just theories, they have been empirically found as well, for why the level is low and why it's declining. And I'll talk briefly about some of that and then come specifically to the COVID context. So one of these reasons that's been put forward, and I think this is, it's very common knowledge, which is the norms around women working, right? So there is the belief that men earn and women will stay at home and take care of the children. So there is a larger belief that women should not be participating or need not participate in the paid workforce. This, alongside this notion of this idea of Sanskritization, which is a theory put forward by the sociologist called M.N. Srinivasan, which is that, when as household incomes increase, the lower income households aspire to be like the upper income households and send off these signals. So they don't want to, and one of these signals is the status that their women don't need to work. And so women staying out of the labor force is seen as a good thing. So there's a larger social stigma around women going and working. So as incomes have increased over the last years, household incomes have increased. And alongside the household income increase, there has been a withdrawal of women from work. Part of this is because of this notion of sending out a signal that as a household, you're better off now, that the woman doesn't need to go out and work. So this is what is known as an income effect in the economic theory. But of course, alongside this is the larger norms that perpetuate women working. They have limited mobility, they have limited access to means of employment, as well as also this whole thing that women going outside the house can affect their purity. So notions of purity also, exacerbate this. But more than this, there's also a clear, what we call as a demand side effect, which is the fact that there are no good jobs. I mean, we already see that even for men, there's been huge jobless growth. That is, for even as the economy has grown, the capacity of the economy to generate jobs has steadily reduced. So for every every 1% increase in GDP, normally you would expect a 4% increase in employment, but that has slowed down. It's only 1%. So there's been a huge slowdown in job generation, and as a result, there are not enough jobs being created. And there's always this thing that when there's jobs in short supply, women are going to be rationed out, men will get preference. So this is sort of over the larger story. And of course, a side note is the measurement. We say that labor force participation of women is low, but that's also behind it is that our labor force statistics and how surveys conducted are unable to capture women's productive work. Lots of women work in their kitchens, they sell items outside, they take care of the livestock, which the milk is sold outside. This is not being economically valued. So the whole statistical apparatus that we have in the country has also failed to capture women's work. So that is also behind the low LFPR, so to speak, right? And so the moment you invisibilize the contribution of women to the national economy, what do? You also invisibilize their entitlements to the growth of the economy, right? They are contributed to the national economic growth, but it is not being valued in official statistics. And as a result, they can't claim the dividends of this growth. So that is the overall context of why we have low LFPR, some of the stated reasons. Now, what happened during COVID? So during COVID, I'll give you two statements, and I think these are very powerful. What we find is that if a woman was employed pre-pandemic, she was 7 times more likely than a man to lose work, 7 times more likely. And this does not matter. We found out that this is not because women are more employed in education and health, and these sectors were, particularly affected. This was happening across all sectors. One. The second statement, having lost work, women were 11 times more likely than men to not come back. So the recovery, so the moment you would have thought, okay, lockdown is over, the economy is more or less recovered. Now these women who were previously working will come back, almost like a rubber band effect, right? You relax it, it comes back. That doesn't happen. Women are 11 times more likely to not come back. And you have things like, you have experience and education. These are things that are favorable for a man and in the labor market when they recover. We don't see this for women. An educated woman, a woman with experience, a woman who had previously salaried job, none of these women are able to come back into the labor force. I mean, so almost 50% of women who are working pre-COVID are not working anymore. So there's been a huge, a movement of women out of the workforce. And when we look at why this is happening, what we see is in the immediate aftermath of COVID, when you have this lockdown, you have this contraction of the economy, what did men do? So a salaried man moved into self-employment. He moved into daily wage work. And there's this flexibility in navigating to alternative arrangements. There's fallback employment for men. For women, self-employment, which is typically the major fallback, did not come through. For women, self-employment was not a fallback, rather their fallback was to just withdraw from the labor market entirely. So where men are able to negotiate the labor market and navigate into different kinds of work, women are forced to withdraw entirely. And not just that, when women do come back, when men do come back, as I said, self-employment is a way for them to come back. Maybe there's some selling food or some kind of entrepreneurial activity that they take up post-COVID or post-lockdown. But for women, self-employment is not as predominant an option. For them, it's daily wage work. And the reason this is important is that daily wage work is far less lower paid. The average wages for a daily wage worker is half what a self-employed person earns. So the failure of self-employment in this context to actually help women come back into work has really exacerbated both the lack of representation of women in the workforce, but also the discrimination at the earnings level. Women are now earning far less than what they used to because they have access to fewer fallback opportunities. So I think, and I'm going to stop here, but I'm happy to discuss more in detail. But really what we see is this really disproportionate impact for women, and the impact comes both in terms of employment loss, but also in terms of recovery. We find that women are sort of really constrained in what their options are, and these kind of identities like education or age, which stand men in good stead in the labor market, don't seem to play out for women.
Thank you so much, Rosa, for putting it so comprehensively. I mean, we are yet to see some, large-scale research to understand a bit more deeply that what is it that women are, going out of the labor market, and what is it that would bring them back. With this as the context, I'll quickly go to Archana. Archana, the context that now Rosa sets, that women's participation in labor market is falling, the challenging social norms, and women being unable to come back quickly and pick up work. So with this as a difficult context, what is your take on building women? You have remained, you are an enterprise in yourself as a woman also. Now, do you see that building women's enterprise now then becomes a response to build back women better in this era with such a economic context, and of course with pandemic hitting women so disproportionately as Rosa is putting it?
So I'd like to thank you for inviting me. And what Rosa has said is absolutely the reality of the Indian women, and how they work and the context in which they work. Now, there are, I would like to first of all segregate working women into two groups. One are women entrepreneurs into two groups actually. One are people who are employers or who run businesses and employ people. And the second are grassroots women who are also entrepreneurs, but who work by themselves, they're craftspeople or artisans or whatever. So the solutions for both the groups would need to be a little different because their requirements are different. Now, if you look at women employers or women who are educated and who can run businesses in India, if you see even at the highest level, I am Ahmedabad. 50% of the women in my batch are not working. I looked at a batch about 10 years below, younger, and I did a survey, and 50% of the women there also are not working. What is the reason? There's only one reason, which is childcare. Most of the women have children and they drop out of the workforce. If a IIM Ahmedabad woman doesn't work for 15 years, I think they're out of pocket, including interest, by at least 10 crores, which would be reasonably substantial for anybody, for any family. Now, childcare and elder care are the major issues, and you cannot sweep it under the carpet because the issues are real, and each one of us may also take the same decisions. So I had called the ambassadors of when I was flow president, I'd called the ambassadors of the countries with the best gender parity index, like Iceland, and asked them to talk about the policies they used in their countries to have women in the workforce. And what came out, Iceland ambassador in particular said, in the 70s, they extended school hours from 1:30 to 4:30. So what essentially happened is that the child was safe in school, and a lot of the extracurricular activities which we do post school were taken care of during school. And women had a straight 8 to 4 or 8 to 5. They had a 8 hours working time where they could go out and get jobs and were guilt free to step out, because solutions can be found even within our current context, but there is a lot of social opprobrium attached to making these kind of choices. But if your school hours are till 4:30, there's no guilt, there's no opprobrium. That's how the system works, and women get free. And that was really the tipping point in that country for allowing educated women to go out and work. So to me, the first thing we need to look at when we want women's participation in labor force is to provide adequate childcare. At all levels, there is no reason why a government school cannot seamlessly convert into a childcare facility, which is what happens. I went to Finland, I saw some schools there. So it's just seamlessly converts into childcare. The minute you have an external childcare, somebody has to take the child to that external childcare. And so you don't know the quality of that, but you trust the school. You are happy with the company the child is keeping when they are with their school fellows. So this has to be a policy taken up by the government to allow schools to offer classes and childcare and post their regular time. When you let school off at 1:30, you're making an assumption that there is somebody at home at 1:30. So I think they have to stop making that assumption and then design policy according to that. I think that is one of the major barriers that we have. Besides that, I say, suppose how do we come up with a solution given what it is, not what it should be, but given the circumstance that women have family responsibilities at all levels, at the grassroots level, that they have they have children to look after, and the demands are not there in bits and pieces. It's very difficult for a woman to get a 4 or 5 hours out together, and there are mobility issues. So One solution, since I have a limited time, I will basically focus on this. One solution that comes to my mind is that women should run e-commerce enterprises, that they should sell on Amazon, Flipkart, and established portals, as well as Facebook and WhatsApp, which are very widely used and very commonly used in India. This is something which has been actually very it has been a very successful area for women entrepreneurs. In India, about 10% of MSMEs are owned by women, but since they are mostly micro enterprises, they account for only about 3 to 4% of the output. Women-owned enterprises in the MSME sector. If you look at the vendor base of companies like Snapdeal or Amazon or Flipkart, it varies between 25% to 30% women. 25, to quarter to a third are women. So as it is, you can see that it's much easier for women to sell online because you can work in your own timetable. You don't really need to go anywhere. The money gets credited to your account, and the mobility issues are taken care of. The time management is taken care of. Now, what is it that these women are to sell? You can say, okay, very well, but at the end of the day, some product has to be there, which has to be produced and sold. Now, here, I would like to point out that in India, we are now in a very good position to be able to do this business because, everybody has an Aadhaar. So you have an identifier. With the Jan Dhan, and more or less everybody has a bank account. You have a very good postal system, which can be used to, and couriers, which can be used to transport out goods. You have there's a very good mobile phone penetration, and basically all you need to run this business is a smartphone. So there are plenty of cheaply available smartphones, and there are enough connections. And a smartphone can now cost about 3,000-4,000 rupees. Smartphone will do the job that you need to take a photograph, list it, whatever it is. We also have some things which are relatively unique. We have probably the world's largest force of craftspeople in India. In every village, there are people who are producing goods, crafts, and nice, with a lot of tradition and very unique items which are produced all across the country. We have a system of self-help groups and a deep system of NGOs and people who are working in this field who could possibly organize. At the end of the day, you don't need every person to be digitally literate, right, in the group. If you have 1 or 2 people, they can sell the production of 10, 15, 20, 30 people. You need one person who is comfortable enough with the technology to be able to do this. So to me, this seems to be a really good way out, not only for selling to other Indians, but selling globally. So the global market for handicrafts is about 400 billion. And I think India only satisfies about 1 billion of it. Can you imagine? Look at the opportunity. And I'm personally selling in my business. I get crafts from villages and I'm selling it globally, and I've got a fabulous rating. The quality is good enough. We don't have to worry about, will the quality be good enough? Will it be accepted? You just have to put it out there, and there is sufficient market for these things. I'd like to share here the example of Taobao. I don't know how many of you have heard of Taobao in China. It's a platform owned by Alibaba, and they focus on rural markets. And I think they have designated 1 lakh villages as Taobao villages, where training centers are set up. Initially, the Taobao itself was setting it up. Now they even franchised it out to people who will train at least a couple of 100 people in that village to list. And people sell whatever, buckets, millets, whatever they are growing. They are happy to sell it online. and it's been a tremendous success. The other advantage is that what happens is that rural migration gets reversed because the jobs are created right there in the village. So this is something which has been observed. So one is, of course, logically we think this is a good solution, but we do have an example. We have a successful model here, which is happening in China, and there is no reason why it cannot happen in India. Now, one is, of course, producer organizations. So they can approach to create your own website and try and sell from it and to reach the customers. It's a very, very difficult task. But you have uh, Amazon, Flipkart, they all have these artisan partnership programs where they make it quite easy. And you have other uh, specialized portals like Co-op, Go Co-op and all, where you can, especially handicrafts can be sold there. So to me, one of the best solutions that you can do is to focus on trying to set up these micro businesses. Maybe have, in the olden days, you'd have a village postmaster who'd write letters for the entire village. So similarly, you could have one or two people who could list for the entire village and take care of the things, and the accounts and all could be done. You don't need too many people. You just need a very few to take care of this. So the solution I would like to, present here is to focus on this. And I'd like another thing here. You see, we have a lot of educated women who are at home, as I said, child care or whatever. Quite often the needs, technological needs and all of setting up a business like this may be beyond what you would expect in a village. Now, if these women entrepreneurs had access to the craftspeople and the in the villages, they could uh, they could sell their goods, and of course their margins would go down for the village people. But uh, I'd like to share a figure here. About 3 years ago, women selling on WhatsApp and Facebook in India were doing business of about $9 billion. I don't have the figures for last year, and it may have been, but the projected figure for 2022 was $40 billion. What do they sell? They sell handmade products by village artisans. So one suggestion which I would like to put out for a government or somebody who is into it just for projecting, um, just for improvement of things, is to do a comprehensive artisan mapping project where you put up the names of artisans and their contact details, and whoever wants to buy from them or use them as a database, women like you and me who are sitting at home can just access it, reach out to them and source it. If you just create that pathway. Indians, I mean, we are tremendously entrepreneurial. You just need to create the sadak and everything will run on it. People will take care of these things. So I think I will now stop.
Thank you, Archana. Thank you for putting the opportunities so well and also showing some light that there is a possibility. I mean, given while we understand from Rosa's deliberation that the context is becoming difficult with the social norms. I mean, when you were speaking, it was taking me back to my Bihar days where I figured out that women and girls don't even have access to phones, let alone doing business through smartphones and all. But the possibilities that you are saying, I hope these possibilities would also be feasible for, I mean, then there somewhere we have to all work together to make these possibilities work for those women and girls for whom even to access a phone is so difficult because of the challenging social norms.
I'd just like to share
Yeah.
one thing. Mission Shakti in Odisha,
Yes.
they gave a smartphone to each SHG. So each group of 10 women was given a smartphone. This was about 3 years ago.
Yeah. And then there's this whole question of how do we train women, train especially young women to pick these entrepreneurial ideas and take them forward. So before I just move forward, Rosa, any quick reaction now that you heard, Archana, that there are immense possibilities? Yet we need to do a lot of research to understand the linkage between social norms and female labor force participation rate going down. Do you want to connect some dots over here? Then we move forward quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Ranjana. Yeah, I actually do. And in fact, I think these are really great, and it's also nice to hear positive things and to hope for the future. But I just want to talk about sort of not anecdotes, but two things that sort of stood out for me. So this was in the context of access to phone, and there was interesting story, which is incident that happened in the context of Punjab. This was about 10 years back, but I don't think things would have changed much. And what happened then was that the then Punjab State Commission for Women chairman found that of the 40% of the divorce cases that were being presented to her, the majority of these, one of the major complaints was that women were spending too much time on their phone. Okay, and now her recommendation in response to this was to tell women, you don't need to spend so much time on the phone. You don't need to talk to your parents. Kindly adjust. Okay, that's story number one. And I'll bring this back. Bring it back to what Archana is talking about. The second thing is in South Korea, and this is slightly distant example, but South Korea, again with the means to sort of support women, introduced a 1-year paternity leave policy. Paternity leave, which is that after childbirth, father take time off work for 1 year, paid paternity leave. Now, what they found was that only 7% of fathers who were eligible were actually taking up paternity leave. Okay. Now, why was this? This was because of the larger norm that if they took paternity leave, A, they will suffer, and B, they might be, sort of scorned. There's a sort of larger social condescension that accompanies when fathers take on this responsibility. Okay, so I think for me, another thing that we often miss in this is the role of society and men in particular. When we talk about pushing women into work and providing them the infrastructure to work, whatever that is, it is also important to talk about men and talking about you need to step up, come out and take care of the kids, take care of responsibilities at the home. It is not a gender. We have to break down this notion that those responsibilities are gendered. They are not. And I think it's also important to have this conversation on Women's Day, around Women's Day, because I find that a lot of this conversation is about women taking the onus, women leaning in. Where are the men? Where are the men in terms of taking responsibilities, both at home, at office, in terms of making space for their female colleagues, acknowledging their contributions as well, right? And I think I want to just bring this into the conversation. We can discuss that in detail. I'm sure Archana, Ribu, and Punam would have more to contribute on this. But yeah, that's just my two cents on Archana's points.
Thanks, Rosa. And yeah, sure, Archana.
I'd just like to say one thing, because when you take an idea or a concept to a group of people and you present it to say 100 families, there'll be some people who, there is a vanguard and there's a rear guard, and there is skepticism. Now, how these things typically work is that, suppose out of the 100 families, only 5 of them really took it seriously, and the women in those 5 families did well. Here, what would happen is that they would start earning. They would get an income, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 a month, depending on, I'm talking about village artisans. So this is not something which will need to be done as a group to be successful. It can be successful for an individual or even a group of 2 or 3 people. You can see the success immediately. If once those families start seeing the money coming in, the other families, they will also move to adopt it. So it won't happen in an instance, but it incrementally, and then maybe you will have a critical mass, and then a lot of people will get into it. But this is because the minute you start doing it, you're going to start seeing money in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. You're going to see the result that fast. So I think it has potential, and that money is visible to all the neighbors and people in the vicinity.
Yes, and that's probably one of the reason, Archana, we could do so well on self-help groups, because the entry point was microcredit, and then the family could see that there is the opportunity of the women coming, joining the group, and then earn and contribute to family income. But that necessarily didn't transform into gender relation transformation. So that's where, when we now these days talk about building women enterprises, we need to then take care of how do we address challenging social norm, which women navigates, and then able to come out and build businesses or enterprises. So that's the grappling factor. So before I move to Punamdi and Ribu for the next segment to hear from them, Punamdi, आपका तो काफी अच्छा काम रहा है कर्णभूमि फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को खड़ा करने का, बट इससे पहले मैं आपके पास आऊं, एक छोटा सा वीडियो ऑक्सफैम के तरफ से कि कोरापुट में, उड़ीसा के कोरापुट जिले में महिलाएं कैसे अपना एंटरप्राइज बिल्ड कर रही है। उसके बाद पूनमदी मैं आपके पास आऊंगी आपका एक्सपीरियंस सुनने के लिए। सो इफ इशिता इज देयर, यू कैन प्ले द शॉर्ट वीडियो।
आमे निजाइबू, आमे निजे पाला रखबू, आमे निजे पाला जिकबू, काटाकाटी करबू, बारा मिसा बइबू, आमे सबू करबू सिना आमके नहीं के यहाँ आमर एंती कौन माँ मनर ना रे एंती जमी पड़ा नाय।
एले भोट देला बेले केंती माँ मनर ना रहीसी जमी पाटा कि बैंक ऋण देला बेले तांकर नाम नाय।
These women farmers are empowered and are independent for the first time in their lives, thanks to the initiative to form a producers' collective. Their story from the farms to the market is indeed a striking one. To bring together smallholder farmers, especially women, to ensure food security and provide sustainable livelihood opportunities for them in the tribal areas of Odisha, Oxfam India began with the formation of several women farmer groups in the villages.
तो सेमानकु आमे देखिलु जे निहाती भाबरे गोटे दरकार रही जे सेमानकु एकत्रित करिवार यूनाइट करिवार। तो आमे चिंता करलु जे एठी सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप फॉर्म करिवा पय। तो आमे प्रत्येक गाँ रे आमे 10 रु 20 जन महिला मानकु नै गोटे गोटे सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप फॉर्मेशन कलु एवं जेमति कि सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप रो नियम अनुसार सेमानकु बैंक सहित लिंकेज करैलु, बैंक रे सेमानकु सेविंग कराइलु।
They are trained in innovative farming methods and are taught about the importance of managing natural resources.
ते जमी मिसा आमर निजर नय आज्ञा सेटा आमर नमती माँ बोली गोटे आते रांडी माइगिना तार जमी लीज रे आमे सेतकी लोग से संगठन लोग बसी करी निष्पत्ति नहीं करी से संगठन लोग ताके बुझाई करी आमे लीज रे नेलु सेटा 10 वर्ष पाए।
कम्युनिटी फार्मिंग इंट्रोड्यूस करबा द्वारा सेमाने गोटे जगह रे ट्रेनिंग नेले इम्प्रूव प्रोसेस उपरे तांको इनपुट कोन कोन लागिवो को सीजन वाइज को वेजिटेबल केते बेले हे परिबो तांको मैन्योर प्रोसेस कोन तांको वाटरिंग प्रोसेस कोन से ऊपर सेमान को ट्रेंड अप करा जायतिला। ट्रेंड अप करबा द्वारा सेमानकर गोटे इंटरेस्ट भी क्रिएट हेतिला।
मूला कलुनी, बाजी कलुनी, बिनिस कलुनी, ककारू कलुनी सबू कलुनी आमे सेटा आमे जेतकी बेसी होइले बिक्री कलुनी कम होइले तो आमे निजे गेनी खाइबा बदल रे खाइलुनी मिसा। तबे हमर दियो मिसा एबे सुस्त रे आछे कि आमे एबे बोल रे चलाचल कली पारलुनी जे आमे बारे मिसा जाउ ना एबे नइले हमर 6 मास का हमर गरर खाइतिलु आज्ञा 6 मास 12 खाइतिलु।
एटा करिबा द्वारा सेमानको डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ फूड मिली जाउची, माने फ्रूट मिली जाउची कि वेजिटेबल्स मिली जाउची आ सेटा सेमाने यूज करछन्ते तांको खाइबा उपरे सेमाने प्रथमे खाउछन्ती आ जहा सब सरप्लस हला ताकू सेमाने नियर बाय मार्केट रे ताकू सेल करछन्ती।
Investing for future is important to alleviate poverty and ensure empowerment of women. Through formation of self-help groups, The women are united and have increased access to economic resources.
ଏବେ ଆମର ନିଜଟା ରୋଜଗାର କରି ଆମେ କଲୁନି ଆମର ଲାଭ ଯେତିକି ହେଲାନି କି ସେଟାକେ ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆମେ 2 ପଇସା ନେଇକରି ବ୍ୟାଙ୍କରେ ରଖି ଦେଇକରି ମିଶା ଆରି ବାର ବଲକାଟା ଖାଇଲୁନି କେମିତି ଆମର ପରବ ପର୍ବାଣୀ ହେଲେ ଛୁଆମାନର ପାଇଁ ଡ୍ରେସ୍ ପଟା କରବାକେ ମିଶା କି ବଡ଼ ବଡ଼ ଛୁଆ ପାଠ ପଢ଼ବା ଲୋକ ଏବେ ଖାତା ପତର ଗେନବାକେ से पैसा रे आमे बोल से चलाचल कलुनी आज्ञा।
अब मैं पूनम दी के पास आ रही हूँ। पूनम दी, ये जो कहानी आपने देखा ये उड़ीसा के दक्षिण उड़ीसा के कोरापुट जिले के आदिवासी महिलाओं ने अपना काम शुरू किया। सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप के महिलाएं जो सब्जी उत्पादन कर रही है और अपना आय कर रही है। तो आपका थोड़ा सा कर्णभूमि जो फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो महिलाओं ने मिलकर खड़ा किया है भागलपुर मुंगेर में, उसका थोड़ा बताइए और कैसे अड़चने आया महिलाओं के साथ और कैसे उसको पार करके आप लोगों ने इस प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को खड़ा किया। पूनम दी, आप थोड़ा सा बताएं।
यहाँ उपस्थित पैनल में सभी को प्रणाम और हमारे श्रोतागण जितने भी तमाम हैं उनको भी प्रणाम। पहले मैं अपना परिचय दे देती हूँ। मैं पूनम कुमारी कर्णभूमि कृषक प्रोड्यूसर कंपनी में मैं सुपरवाइजर पद पर कार्यरत हूँ। मैं अपना कंपनी का परिचय देती हूँ। हमारा कंपनी का नाम कर्णभूमि कृषक प्रोड्यूसर कंपनी है। ये 23 मई 2018 को इसका गठन किया गया था। ये हमारा कंपनी का, इसमें हमारे यहाँ 774 बहनें शेयर होल्डर है और 14,000 तक किसान बहनें हमसे जुड़ी हुई है हमारी कंपनी से, और उन्हें हम सुविधा खाद का, बीज का, अन्य चीजों का वहां तक पहुंचाते हैं। और हमारी जो बहन है कर्णभूमि की जो हमसे बीज लेती है उनका उत्पाद जो होता है ये हमारी कर्णभूमि कंपनी उनके उत्पाद भी लेते हैं और उन्हें अच्छा दाम भी देते हैं।
पूनम दी, थोड़ा सा बताइए जो मेंबर इसमें जुड़े हुए हैं क्या उनके लिए बहुत आसान था जुड़ना? उनके घर से कोई रोक टोक आया या फिर कैसे जुड़ाव कैसे बना के रखा आप लोगों ने इस कंपनी को?
जी नहीं, जब मेरी बहन जुड़ी इसमें हम लोग ये कर्णभूमि कंपनी को गठन करने का शुरुआत किए तो हमें बहुत सारा चीज झेलना पड़ा। हमें बहनों की सर्वे किए, फिर बहनों को हम ग्रुप बनाए, उसमें से फिर बहनों को हम शेयर होल्डर बनाए। हमारे किसान जब हमारी शेयर होल्डर बहन बनी तो उसमें एक मतलब वोटिंग हुआ कि इस कंपनी को चलाने के लिए कुछ बहनों, एक्टिव बहनों को हमको तैयार करना पड़ेगा जो हमारी कर्णभूमि की सारा जो भी कार्यक्रम है उसको अच्छे से समझे बुझे और आगे वो अच्छे से करे। तो फिर हमारी जो शेयर होल्डर बहन थी उसमें एक्टिव बहन जैसे कि बैंक हो या मार्केट हो या कुछ भी मतलब हमारे ऑफिस का डॉक्यूमेंट को पढ़ सके इस तरह बहन का चुनाव की। फिर उसमें उनका पद को हम लोग उसमें सारे मीटिंग के दौरान उनके पद को ठहराया गया कि ये बहन ये पद के लायक है। तो उसको ये जो कि कंपनी के शुरुआत में जैसे हमारे यहाँ कोई मार्केट का उनको जानकारी हो, किसी को बैंक का जानकारी हो, किसी का रेट का जानकारी हो, इस तरह से सब हम लोग करके एक कंपनी चलाने का हम लोग कैसे सुचारू रूप से इस कंपनी को चलाएं, सारे को बहन को पद दिए और इसको फिर हम लोग कंपनी का गठन किए।
जैसे मैं जब भागलपुर विजिट कर रही थी, ये करीब 2017-18 की बात है, कुछ बहनें ये भी बोल रही थी कि वो तभी भी जो खेती करती है, खेत में जो सब्जी लगाती है, उसका निर्णय वो अकेले नहीं करती है, उसको अपना घरवाला से पूछ के करना पड़ता है। क्या अभी भी वो स्थिति है?
नहीं, उस समय बहन घर वालों पर आश्रित थी। घर वाले जो कहते थे या बीज लेना हो, क्या किस वैरायटी का बीज लेना हो तो उन पर आश्रित थी। तब घर वाले उनको बोलते थे कि नहीं ये बीज ही हम लेंगे वैरायटी का, तो वो वही करती थी। लेकिन आज के डेट में बहन खुद निर्णय लेती है, खुद आत्मनिर्भर हो गई है हमारी बहन।
और ये जो बहनें बाजार में बेचने जाती है अपना जो सब्जी है, वहाँ क्या परिस्थिति होती है उनके साथ? वो भी तो एक पुरुष तांत्रिक एरिया ही है, अधिकतर जो बेचने आते हैं वो पुरुष होते हैं, तो क्या उनके साथ
हमारे यहाँ अब जो हमारे यहाँ जो है कर्णभूमि में जो हमारी बहन की कम्युनिटी है, ये हमारी बहन निर्णय खुद लेती है कि हमें कहाँ देना है, किस मार्केट में देना है, किस वेंडर को देना है, इस वेंडर का नेचर क्या है, उनका मार्केट में क्या है अदा, किस तरह का उसका प्रभाव पड़ता है हम लोगों पर, ये वे लोग निर्णय लेती है, खुद उससे जाके बात करती है। बहन खुद सशक्त हो गई है कि हमें कहाँ क्या करना है। फिर बहन एक अपना कलेक्शन सेंटर पर जो है अपना उत्पाद को इकट्ठा करती है और वेंडर से बात करती है, रेट भाव उनका सब वेंडर से सिर्फ संपर्क करके उन्हें एक लीड करती है बहन।
तो बहनें अभी खुद वो करती है, किसी पे निर्भर
नहीं।
Okay. This is just for the sake of our audience who has joined us today, that Karnabhumi Farmer Producer Organization has been one of its kind in the districts of Bhagalpur and Munger, where almost 4,000 women are the member of it, and they are running this producer organization. And as you can hear, Punam, that it's only women who are taking decision of what to grow in the field, where to sell the produce, and they are earning on their own and contributing to the household income. We don't claim that it has completely changed the gender relation, but as you can hear, that some of the decision is in their hands now. So we wish that to grow more such kind of cooperative and enterprise across India in coming days. Thank you, Punam दी. तो अगला थोड़ा देर बाद और कुछ सवाल होगी आपसे. अभी I'll quickly come to Ribu. Ribu, from the starting of the discussion, you've been hearing that how difficult is the condition of women, the downward going of the labor force, participation rate, the social norms. Yet Archana is painting a picture of hope and opportunities. All. Now, today we are sitting as a diverse group of women, and you coming from the corporate sector. I have two questions for you. One, do you see the possibility? And then what role do corporate sector can play in building women's leadership and women's enterprise? And if you can lay out with some of the examples would be fantastic.
Great. Thank you so much, Ranjana. And hello to my panelists and amazing discussion here. So brilliant, panelists. Thank you very much, everybody. Punam di badhiya kaam kar rahe hain aap. Please carry on with the great work that you're doing. To answer your question, Ranjana, the easy answer is yes. There is a lot of hope for women, and there is a lot of work that corporates are doing as part of, you call it diversity and inclusion, or you call it corporate social responsibility. There is a lot that's happening. So I would like to divide this into really three parts. One is let's begin from the schooling era, when girl children don't really go to school, or they go to school and then drop out halfway. So I know for a fact that at least I've been working with about 7 to 8 different corporates, and all of us are in this endeavor of trying to see that as many girl children are there in class, or they stay the full time in their school. So what we're doing is building schools where we can have a lot of these girl children stay through the day. You see a lot of dropout as the girl children grow older, because there are not enough toilets, for example. That's the basic reason why you see a lot of drop in schools, especially the girl child. So building that infrastructure is something a lot of organizations, lot of corporate organizations have picked up. I myself can take an example of Amadeus. We've built about 4 schools in and around Karnataka, and we have close to about 1,200 girls studying in these schools. So we haven't seen a drop after that. So that's something that we're doing at a very small scale. And if many more corporates come out and do something like that, it's really going to make a difference. So that's one aspect. The second is we've also picked up girls who are brilliant in their studies, but because of the socioeconomic factor, they're not able to move ahead. So just putting them in a targeted mentoring program to be able to take them forward and to develop the next generation skills of being confident, being able to work together in a team. All of those 21st century skill building is something that we're doing. And this is about 9,000 students that we are working with in about 98 schools in Anekal Taluk, which is in Karnataka. So these are smaller steps that corporates are taking for sure. So if I move from there to the corporate world really per se, if I come to an engineering college, for example, And this is something that I've been speaking off late about, because there is a very, very specific campus engagement that I'm looking at, and this is only for women. Because when we went to campuses, we do campus engagement every year. And when the last couple of times that we went to campuses, we saw that the ratio of women or girl children appearing for their tests versus coming on to the corporate finally, there's a drastic shift. If I have, for example, 60% of women who have appeared for tests, but when it comes to the final round of interview and when they join the organization, is less than 5%. That means there is something that is going terribly wrong through this entire journey, right? So this year we've started a program just to look at high potential girl children in engineering colleges. We work with them on a 1-year basis and see what kind of transformation can a corporate do. So that's something that we've taken on ourselves, saying we will identify 10 colleges and then try and work with these girls. Moving on from there, if I look at the current population of women working, and I know Rosa and Archana did allude to this a little earlier about women who have taken a break, for whatever reason, maternity, taking care of their elderly at home and things like that. But if they want to come back to work, there has been a lot of resistance from even corporates, saying their skills are not updated. These are engineering folks, they need to update their skills, but it's not done because they have been busy with doing whatever they need to do at home. This year we started, or last year we started, a program called Udan, wherein we went to the market. We said women engineers who've taken a break from 2 to 8 years and want to come back into work, we are opening this forum for you. And I think only about 4 social posts that went out. I had 400 women apply. And I mean, this was a pilot batch, so I couldn't take so many people, but I had 400 women who applied. And the stereotype is something that we all should be cognizant of, especially because when we actually put the entire program together, we went to the leadership team, we said, we want to do something like this. And I didn't have too many leaders who were excited and wanted to, pilot this in their respective divisions. They were like, no, they've taken a long break. We don't know how they're going to come back and, fit in cultural fitment, technological fitment. Will they be able to deliver projects? So there were so many, biases in their head. So we said, we will chalk out a program, a 6 months program, where the first month is just about training these women in their skill sets, right? If they come with a Java or C++, we kind of trained them, gave them behavioral, cultural, all those, trainings, and they're right now in the system with us and doing brilliantly well. So it's about making those small steps, taking those small steps and, creating that impact. So what if it's just about 20, 30 women that we've hired just now? But if there are many more corporates who are going to, do this and make a difference, that's going to be brilliant. Last but not the least, I think one thing I did want to speak about is also we work with an NGO called Gift Tabled, and they work with people with disability and women. And what we do with these women is we've been working with them for about 3 years now, a set of about 120 women in each batch. We give them life skills. For example, if it is a craftsman, we kind of enhance their skill. We look at catering businesses. So these are things that we work with women. We put them in a group, work with them, ensure that they have a job at hand, and then kind of let them into the world of whatever they want to do. So these are things that we've kind of done in very small bits and pieces, but the impact that we've created is pretty big, if I may call it, from an impact perspective. And the last thing that I want to speak about is we started a cyber wellness for these schools that I was talking about, 98 schools, and we kind of extending that to the women as well, because there is a lot of telephone that's coming into the picture, mobiles are coming into the picture. So it's about educating them how to use these smartphones. So that's something that we are encouraging a lot more women to come in for these classes and get themselves educated. So these are a couple of steps that we've taken, and this is a small drop in the ocean, I suppose.
Thank you, Ribu. So in the meantime, I can see some questions in the chat box. I'll just post it to, because we have just opened it for the plenary, to the audience. So Ribu, this either you or Archana can take it, that what kind of work are corporate most interested in, given that not all work show immediate impact, especially if we have to deal with, building women's leadership or girls' leadership, who are then will be able to challenge social norms. So in that context, what would be the most interest of the corporate world right now? Ribu, you said some of the examples, but if you can just add on, and then Archana, you would also want to, reflect on that.
Ranjana, just the first bit of the question, sorry, I didn't get that.
That's very straight. That what kind of work are corporate most interested in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
What
then
kind of work?
yes.
Okay. So if you look at an organization like mine, for example, we are a software firm. So a lot of openings that you would see is around engineering skill sets. So it'll be Java, C++. Those are the kind of skill sets that we hire for. So that's something that we will look at. But we are also looking at, skill building with along with NASSCOM, trying to see if we can look at women to be placed in different travel agencies. We are a travel technology organizations. We have a lot of affiliates that we work with. For example, an airport or an airline. All of those are our associates. So we're trying to see if we can build something, in terms of their education and move them into such sister organizations. So that's something that we are working on as well.
थैंक्स रिबू। एक सवाल पूनम दी के लिए आया है। पूनम दी, जो महिला किसान आपके साथ जुड़ी हुई है बिहार में, सबसे ज्यादा चैलेंज उनके लिए क्या रहा है? सबसे बड़ा हर्डल, सबसे बड़ा दिक्कत उनके लिए क्या रहा है?
हमारे यहाँ जो बहन हमसे जुड़ी हुई है, उनके लिए चैलेंज अभी कोरोना काल में तो बहुत बड़ा आया है। जैसे कि अभी उनके लिए मार्केटिंग, और किसान बहन के लिए उनको बीज नहीं दे पा रहे थे। तो ये हम लोग के लिए, उनके लिए चैलेंज है। जो कोरोना में सारा दुकान बंद था, और उस बंदी में हम लोग 143 बहनों को, वहां हमारी जो बहन थी कृषि सखी, वहां तक उन लोग को घर तक पहुंचाई। इस कोरोना काल में हमारे लिए बहन बहुत बड़ा काम कृषि सखी उनके लिए की। किसान का कीमती समय होता है। अगर किसान एक दिन खेत में अपना बीज नहीं डालती है तो उनको साल भर का नष्ट होता है, उनको ये झेलना पड़ता है। तो इस तरह का चैलेंज हमारा। हाँ, फिर ये हुआ कि उनके बच्चे का जो पढ़ाई था, वे पढ़ाई नहीं कर पाते थे, ऑनलाइन पढ़ाई होता था। तो उनके पास मोबाइल नहीं था, मोबाइल पैसा नहीं था, उनके पास काम नहीं हो रहा था, उनके पति काम नहीं कर रहे थे, जिससे कि उनके घर में टेंशन भी हो रहा था आपस में। पैसा का आवागमन नहीं हुआ तो टेंशन आपस में हो गया लोगों को अपने में। तो बच्चे का पढ़ाई भी खत्म हो गया। मोबाइल तो 1 रुपया का चीज नहीं है कि किसान बहन ला के तुरंत दे देगी बहनों को। ऑनलाइन पढ़ाई हो रहा था, बच्चे का पढ़ाई भी खत्म हो गया। हमारी महिला बहन हमेशा टेंशन में जीने लगी, आपस में झगड़ा होने लगा, घर में बहुत तरह का समस्या आने लगी। इस तरह का चैलेंज हमारी बहनों को झेलना पड़ा है।
Thank you, Punamdi. Archana, there is this question for you, that 2 years of COVID has shown that there is a huge digital divide. I mean, what you are also was touching upon. So would that mean for women to access to phone and be uh, phone savvy? I mean, basically the person is asking that whether this digital divide and the platform-based enterprise that you are saying, do you then still see a possibility of women to take those kind of enterprises, which then they can bring on?
It is, of course, the woman is the last person to get access to the digital. Even when we had people who were working from home in our company, we have a very large number of women managers, and their husbands or children would have priority with respect to all the electronic, the laptop or the phone or whatever they wanted to use. But what I was suggesting is that one, of course, is that the governments take a lead, or corporates or organizations in making phones available to the women. It's something that people can step in. Corporates, it's an easy thing to do, to buy phones and just give it to a certain number of women. The other thing I was saying is that what Odisha has done is that you give it to each self-help group. So each individual woman doesn't need the phone. And if it belongs to the self-help group, the phone cannot be appropriated. Even if you give a phone, the phone may be appropriated by somebody else in the family, right? So if it is with the group as a part of the official phone of the group, then some of this can be taken care of. Not all. It's possible that even the self-help groups will not use it adequately and all, but we are not trying to find 100% solution. This is not like a law enforcement solution that you want everybody to do it. We just need a certain number to start doing it, and as some of them do it, you have a certain critical mass in every village, in every geography, whatever community. You will find that automatically, if the returns start coming, other people will join in, and the problems, then you can say, okay, 3,000 rupees means I earn 5,000 rupees a month. The maths becomes different.
Yeah,
So
thanks, Archana.
this is what I would have to say, that let's work with the self-help groups or the NGOs first.
Thanks. Rosa, this whole conversation that you are hearing, does this trigger new areas of interest? I mean, while we understand that much deeper, I mean, right now we have anecdotal evidences of these connections, but do you see some immediate research areas that can actually build back women better, where we can address the social norms, yet build enterprise? I mean, this is just an impromptu question to you from my side.
No, absolutely. And I think this also, I don't know if people have read Shrayana Bhattacharya's book on Desperately Seeking Shahrukh, but one of the points that she makes is feminism and this sort of autonomy of women is not grand flourishes. It's small little things, micro things that happen at the household. It's little pushbacks, right? And I think what I'm hearing from the conversation is that we can't expect an overnight change. It's going to be your little things. It might be, as Archana said, handing over a phone to the self-help group, enabling the group as a whole to access a larger market. It's a small little thing, and now you have the fourth standard girl seeing her mother earning money. You have the role model effect. You have then, you have this domino effect, and you have her confidence being built up as a result, and us hopefully as a gradual breakdown of norms. So I think there's this whole thing that sometimes we look for these massive it's like kind of huge interventions, and maybe it's just the small things. But I think also, just to build up on the point that Archana had also made, which is that on this digital infrastructure, we really have an infrastructure in place to actually channel that. We have the National Rural Livelihood Mission, we have the Urban Livelihood Mission, we also have the Common Service Centers, and these have done really well. The Common Service Centers have been a place to kind of on the one hand access your welfare schemes, but these can also be used as places for women to approach to get this kind of training, right? So they can be acting as bridges. And the other thing that I see huge, and this is something that at the center we've looked at, which is this notion of Usenet, which is basically empowering rural as well as urban youth who are, little more digitally savvy, empower them to work in these common service centers, and they will act as the bridge between these women entrepreneurs and the larger. Okay, and this is particularly pertinent because what you see in the COVID time is a lot of young workers have been displaced. They've lost jobs and not been able to come back. Very similar to what you see for women. Now, think of the synergy here. You are using these young people who are already very digitally savvy and helping them to reach out to these young or not so young women entrepreneurs and kind of improve their whatever enterprises that they are involved in, right? And there's, again, these are these small things that can do, and we have an already existing infrastructure that can then be catalyzed to this. So I think in terms of maybe not broader research questions, but really the research around using existing infrastructure to push some of these through. I think that's something that is really worthwhile looking at, because as much as we, we identify gaps, I think the next step is to say, well, we have this and this is a way now, how can we use existing stuff to channelize that?
And
I'd like to see something here. Rosa, you're, I think, Bangalore based. So Amazon and Flipkart have been running these kind of Karigari programs now for 3-4 years. It might be interesting to reach out to them and ask them for their success stories, because they would have worked with groups which have managed to implement this in their village or create that kind of livelihood. And I think highlighting these success stories would, and analyzing how they worked and what happened would definitely be a huge motivational, it could be something which could, because there's a lot of skepticism around, as everybody said that, whether it will work, is it too, you can't even read or write, and now you want to sell internationally online, how is that ever going to work? So it would be interesting. I think they would definitely have many success stories here, which can be.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And I mean, yeah, something to keep adding to the ideas folder to research to focus on.
थैंक्स अर्चना. क्विकली पूनम दी, ये काफी बातचीत हो रही है कि क्या महिलाएं अपना फोन, जो स्मार्टफोन है या कंप्यूटर है, उसको इस्तेमाल करके अपना बिजनेस को बढ़ा सकती है, क्योंकि आप एकदम गांव के महिला बहनों के साथ जुड़ी हुई है. आपका क्या कहना है इस पे? आपका क्या एक्सपीरियंस है?
देखिए, हमारे यहाँ जो कर्णभूमि की बहन है, तो पहले तो हमारी बहन डिजिटल के मामले में कुछ नहीं जानती थी, लेकिन कोरोना ने सबको सिखा दिया. हम लोग को ये कोरोना में बहुत दिक्कत आई कि बहन के साथ हम कैसे काम करेंगे, जाना आना नहीं है, गाड़ी का सुविधा नहीं है, हम वहां जाके बात नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, मीटिंग नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. तो बहन को हम ट्रेनिंग दिए, बहनों को हम ट्रेनिंग दिए मोबाइल से, कि बहन मोबाइल पर कैसे हम लोग वीडियो कॉलिंग करेंगे, कैसे हम लोग डिमांड लेंगे. इस तरह से बहनों को बहुत मुश्किल से ट्रेनिंग दिए बहन को. तो बहन डिमांड लेना शुरू कर दी. हमारी जो कृषि सखी थी विलेज में, वे डिमांड लेती थी और मोबाइल के माध्यम से हमें वे अपना डिमांड बताती थी. और हम लोग अपने आप को मतलब सारा सुविधा कोरोना में सब चीज लेकर के अपना किट चले, कि किसी तरह पॉइंट पर हम उनको जाकर के सीट जाकर के दे दे कि बहन का खेती रुके नहीं. मोबाइल पर सारा हम लोग का कार्यक्रम होता था, और मोबाइल पर आज बहन हमारी बहुत सा डिजिटल साक्षर हो गई है. इसके कोरोना के एक बहाना हुआ जो भी कहा जाए, लेकिन हमारी बहन डिजिटल के माध्यम में साक्षर तो हो गई. मुश्किलें तो आई, बहुत सा जानकारी हो गई ऑनलाइन के माध्यम में. पहले हमारी बहन कर्णभूमि की बहन जो है ब्लॉक डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पर ही काम करती थी. जैसे अभी हम लोग वेजिटेबल के साथ साथ कुछ हम लोग अचार पापड़ ये सब पर सत्तू पर काम कर रहे हैं. तो अब हमारी बहन ऑनलाइन के माध्यम दिल्ली तक भी भेज रही है अपना सामान को.
थैंक यू पूनम.
हाँ, तो हमारी बहन तो अभी काफी जानकारी हो गई है डिजिटल के माध्यम में. बहुत सा मैसेज व्हाट्सएप पर भी करती है. फोटो कोई दिक्कत होता है उनको पौधा में, तो फोटो खींच के हमको तुरंत भेजती है कि दीदी हमारे पौधे में ये रोग लग गया, हम क्या करेंगे, इसमें क्या दवाई देंगे. फिर हमारे यहाँ कर्णभूमि में जो हमारे सुबोध भाई हैं कृषि विशेषज्ञ, फिर उनसे बात करते हैं, उनको बताते हैं कि ऐसा ऐसा फील्ड से हमारे यहाँ आया है, उनको क्या बताया जाए. फिर उनको मोबाइल पर हम लोग बताते हैं वीडियो कॉलिंग करके कि ये दवाई इतना डोज, इतना मतलब अपना घरेलू जो जैविक आधारित है उस पर भी हम लोग बहनों को ट्रेनिंग देते हैं, और बहन को बताते हैं कि आप बहन इस तरह से इस्तेमाल कीजिए. तो हमारा बहन का ये कोरोना में खेती के संबंध में कुछ रुका नहीं है, हम मोबाइल के माध्यम से उनको करते चले गए हैं.
Thank you, Punam Di. So basically on one side, if we are talking about digital divide, Punam Di ऐसा बता रही है कि बहनें अभी सीख भी रही है. So there is an immense possibility. Before we quickly move to, हाँ जी.
बहन को जब कोरोना काल में बहन जब हमारी कुछ नहीं जान रही है थी कि कैसे मास्क बनाया जाए, तो हम लोग उनको मोबाइल के माध्यम से ट्रेनिंग दिए कि कितना इंच उनको रखेंगे लंबाई और चौड़ाई, और बहन घर में ही बनाई उसको. और फिर हम बहन के ग्रुप में बहन को जो दिए, उनको हम लोग पैसा अपने कर्णभूमि के माध्यम से उस बहनों को पैसा दिए और उनसे बनवाए, और उनको मतलब पैसा का दिक्कतें थी. कैसे मतलब पैसा आता कोरोना में, तो हम लोग मोबाइल के माध्यम से उन्हें ट्रेनिंग भी दिए और वे उससे ट्रेनिंग लेके घर में ही बनाई और फिर उससे 2 पैसा उनको हो गया।
Thank you, Punam di. बहुत अच्छा लगा सुन के. Ribu, before we move to the next segment, this is a quick question for you. That is there a possibility of then designing a convergent program that on one hand we address the social norms that girls are surviving, and that's the kind of issue that you have highlighted, that there's a huge dropout, and then also design some income enhancement program. Is there a possibility? And then would you want to comment on that as someone from the CSI board?
Yes, very much. So that's something that we are already working on, Ranjana. So we're putting an entire curriculum together in terms of what are those real issues that we need to address. That's in the works for sure.
Okay, thank you. So before I come to all the panelists, कि आपके आखिरी 2 शब्द जो कल इंटरनेशनल वुमेन्स डे को मद्देनजर रखते हुए और आज का जो चर्चा चला उसको मद्देनजर रखते हुए, keeping into the discussion points, before I come to your final comments, there is another very small film on our work in Jharkhand, where again, yet again, you will see how women are taking leadership on another enterprise. So I request Ishita to play.
For centuries, the sal tree has played an important role in the life and livelihood of tribal people in Jharkhand.
बीर खोय आर फल डल ले अगुइदा आर जड़ी बूटी ले अगुइदा आर पूजा पाठ रे सरजम सकाम कोगी अडी आट जरूर लेया मतकम ले लांगदा आयमा चीज ले न्यामदा बीर खोय.
The tribal women travel deep into the forest to collect sal leaves, which are then stitched together with bamboo splits to make disposable plates. Sal leaf plate making provides a source of income to thousands of tribal women in remote hamlets of Jharkhand.
इन दो बले नितो ओड़ा रे चला बनाव लगी अडी मुश्किल ले तहे कना लहा दो अदो बीर को सकाम अगू कते ले पतड़ाय तहना आर व्यापारी को हजू कान तहना उनको टेले अखरिñ तहना अडी सस्ता ते.
Oxfam India in Jharkhand works towards management and conservation of community forest resources while strengthening and diversifying the livelihoods basket in the region using off-grid renewable energy solutions such as solar power.
When we intervened in this area, our idea was again to build climate resilience in these forest-based livelihood streams. So we started off by providing 6 units of leg press machines, and then we added 8 more units of hand press machine, which basically improved the quality of the product. And then we went ahead and solderized one of these hand press machines, which further improved the quality of the product.
पतड़ा मशीन दो बदला वाला को हेलिना आर को लय आले थाना लय आलिया को आर को खोज के लिया ट्रेनिंग रे ना ट्रेनिंग करे ले चलावना आर नवा पतड़ा प्लेट बनाव ले चीट केदा आर नवा ते दो पैसा अडी ज्यादा के हुयुक कना मेहनत लखाय दो.
Conventional electricity is unreliable in these remote areas, leading to loss of productivity and uncertainty. The solar unit will now provide uninterrupted, steady power supply, helping the women collectives to plan their trade better. The leaf plate machines have literally made life easier for the women here. They have formed collectives and have enthusiastically taken up this enterprise, assigning days for each member to use the machine as per their convenience.
15-16 जना ले ग्रुप कना आर नवा मशीन रे कमिया कना आदो पे हड़ पुन हड़ कते सप्ताह रे बोले ले हिसो कना उनका ले बनाव दा आर नवा दो घटी तगे ले अखरिंदा.
मार्केट से हम लोगों ने लिंक कर दिया, तो उससे क्या हुआ कि वो खुद उसके घर पे मार्केट चल के आ गया और वहीं से उसका पत्तल लेके लोग जाते हैं, तो उसको हाट जाने में जो समय लगता था वो बचा।
लहा तेदो मिटे पतड़ा रे बोले 20 पैसा गेले कमावे थाना आ नितो दो मशीन ले नाम केते 70 पैसा ले कमादा आदो उनाते अडा ले कुसिया कना नवा मशीन आर पैसा जदा हुयु कान तलेया आ उना खोय खर्चा अडी मज तेले उड़ा रे ले चला बनादा।
Mechanized leaf plate making has helped the women become more independent and assertive. The intervention has resulted in quality leaf plates which are eco-friendly and fetch them better market prices.
Mainly the groups who have taken up entrepreneurial enterprise initiatives, their collective, confidence, the way they come, outside the household, do the business, share resources. There is absolutely a feminist way of building enterprise, which they have taught us, which is very fascinating. The last round of, not a question, but a reflection from all of your side. Now that we understand a bit of the context that Rosa had started with, and then have seen few of the models which has helped women to enhance their income, and in some cases we have seen that has also helped them to challenge some of the social norms. जो पूनम दी कह रही है, अब वो खुद बाजार जाती है, खुद negotiate करती है. Looking into all these things, and then tomorrow is the International Women's Day. So what would be your final take? That is there still a possibility that we build women's leadership and build a far more resilient economy? Because this year's International Women's Day is, the theme is building sustainable economy, and then where do women take leadership? So your final comments on this. I start with Rosa.
Thanks, Ranjana. I think, it's just been really heartening to be a part of this and to watch these videos, because it is really so hopeful. And I think broad sort of takeaways from the videos, as well as what the panelists have said, is really this thing about creating an enabling ecosystem for women, right? And I think it's crucial that has to be identified, especially in the case of entrepreneurship. Because as Punamji said, and as also what we saw in this last video, as an entrepreneur, the moment you're an entrepreneur, as a woman, you have to interact with the credit market, you have to interact with another input market, then you also have to interact with your middlemen or your, whatever the market that you sell in. And in each of these places, women face discrimination and hurdles. And it's there, and I think these are the research around the fact that women are discriminated in each of these markets is established. And it's important for entities like Oxfam, entities like the ones that Ribu works with, even Archana's organizations as well, to understand. I think they already cognize this and then find their place in breaking down these barriers for women. So that is one kind of sort of physical infrastructure that has to come into place. But also on an aside, it's also about building the care infrastructure, which is what I think Archana had also mentioned right at the beginning, right? You have to have schools, you have to have daycares so that women can put their kids somewhere and safely, and they can go out and work. And I think also then is the larger infrastructure, the social infrastructure around this. One is, I think this is something really important and close to my heart, is that when we are advocating women going out to work, we also need to advocate that their work in their household work has to come down, because otherwise you are just doubly burdening women. Women, as we already know, spend 10 times more time in household work. Now, if we are saying let's go out or let's have get them engaged in entrepreneurship, you also have to have the conversation around reducing their burden of domestic work. This could be through smart kitchens like that's run in Kerala, but I think it's a larger conversation around bringing the rest of the household into the kitchen, into doing the laundry. And then you also have the larger social norms of having mentors, having your role models. And I think this is crucial, especially for, in a long-term perspective, to make sure that our young girls are also seeing the possibilities of employment and the larger sort of just personal benefits from that, and the fact that they don't need to sort of adhere to a certain stereotype that a lot of us have been put through. And I think that is sort of the sort of larger social infrastructure which needs to be broken down. But I also see hope. I see that there is a lot of these already in place, and it's just about getting it moving. The wheels are already rolling. It's just about getting it to go faster, I guess.
Thanks, Rosa. Archana, your final take?
So I firmly believe that economic empowerment will lead to change in the social norms and social empowerment. Of course, it's a it's a spiral, right? If you're economically empowered, you'll break some social barriers, which will allow you to earn more money and all. But we have to start somewhere, and I believe that it is, instead of trying to change everything with a stroke of pen, which is very unlikely to happen, it's important that we start businesses and it's important to create success stories in every neighborhood, because we Indians are very skeptical, and if we see something which is far away to us, we tend to discount it. But if you see your neighbor or somebody in the next road doing well, then we are quick to adopt it. So it's important to scatter success stories, across communities, because that will help other people step in. And these are very low entry barrier options that we are presenting, right? They're not very, somebody doesn't have to go and set up a huge industry and invest a few hundred crores for those women to get jobs. They really need very low. So the only barrier is of training, reaching out, and you don't have very large investment or infrastructure barriers. The infrastructure has already come in place in the last 10 years. The mobile networks, the Aadhaar, the bank accounts, all of that is already in place. I think it's almost, sometimes I feel this is like really low hanging fruit. And if we just go after it. For example, I would be glad to market these plates for you. So, better than 70 paisa for sure.
Thanks,
There's a
Archana.
whole world out there looking for sustainable and eco-friendly packaging, products and use. So this is something I'm quite willing to put my company forward to market a lot of these products if you have them. So and there've been many people like me.
Sure. Thank you, Archana. पूनम दी, आप कर्णभूमि महिला फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के तरफ से बाकी महिलाओं को क्या संदेश देना चाहेंगी कि आप लोगों ने जितना अड़चन को पार करके इसको खड़ा किया है, आज एक सक्सेसफुल मॉडल है ये, आपके तरफ से क्या मैसेज रहेगा उनके लिए?
उनके लिए हमारे इधर से मैसेज यही रहेगा कि वे जब भी अपना कंपनी कोई बनाना चाह रही हैं बहन, तो सबसे पहले अपना कंपनी को खड़ा करने के लिए बहन को, ये जो बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर हम लोग चुने थे बहन को, तो उसका कागज जो दस्तावेज है उनका सही रहना चाहिए। हम लोग को बहुत इसमें समस्या झेलना पड़ा, और उन लोग उसका जो हम जितना भी गलती था उसमें सारा चीज हम लोग सुधार करवाए बहुत दिक्कतें से। एक कंपनी को खड़ा करने के लिए सबसे पहले पेपर सही रहना चाहिए, और हाँ, उसके बाद लाइसेंस, बहुत सारे लाइसेंस होते हैं, उस पर हम लोग को काफी ध्यान देना चाहिए कि हम लोग का जितना भी लाइसेंस और जीएसटी वगैरह बहुत सा पेपर है उसका लाइन अप होना चाहिए। एक कंपनी को खड़ा करने के लिए रकम की जरूरत होती है, उनका व्यवस्था करना चाहिए कि हम कहाँ से बात करें, कहाँ से हमको कैपिटल छोटा सा लेके बड़ा तक हमको कैपिटल आए, जो कि हम अपना कंपनी को अच्छे से सस्टेन कर सकें। उसके बाद फिर हमारे कंपनी में जो एक अकाउंटेंट हो, अच्छे से अकाउंटेंट होना चाहिए। उसके लिए तो उनका हाई अमाउंट होता है, तो उसके लिए सोचना है यहाँ पर कि हमारा कंपनी में भी पैसा नहीं है, हम एक कंपनी को खड़ा कर रहे हैं तो उनको पेमेंट हम कहाँ से देंगे, इस चीज पर चर्चा करना चाहिए, और उसका कहाँ से व्यवस्था हो, ये सारा चीज का हम लोग सब लोग बैठ करके, और ऊपर से आप लोग से सब लोग से कह करके अपने बारे में कि भाई एक कंपनी को खड़ा करने के लिए जो भी दिक्कतें होती हैं, ये सब छोटा छोटा दिक्कतें आप लोग के माध्यम से हम लोग का दिक्कत खत्म हो जाए, और जो भी कंपनी खड़ा करे उनको भी आप लोग का सहयोग मिले तो उनका जरूर सक्सेस होगा।
मुझे आज सबसे अच्छा क्या लग रहा है, 20 साल पहले जब मैंने करियर शुरू किया था, महिलाएं सिर्फ वो जो बनाती है गांव में, उसी के बारे में बात करती थी। आज मैं पूनम बहन को देख रही हूँ, बहुत कॉन्फिडेंस के साथ वो कंपनी का फाइनेंशियल्स के बारे में, क्या कागजात चाहिए, क्या मेंबरशिप होना चाहिए, आई मीन वेरी फ्यू वुमेन टॉक ऑफ इट, एंड वी आर रियली ग्लैड टू सी दैट शी इज रियली टॉकिंग अबाउट ऑल दिस थिंग्स विद शेयर कॉन्फिडेंस। बहुत अच्छा लगा पूनम दी आपका सुन के।
जी, इसमें तो खैर मेरा ये अपना भी कॉन्फिडेंस हो गया, और ये सारा कॉन्फिडेंस जो है ये हमारी बहनों के भी साथ में है, क्योंकि जब ये इसमें जो है हमारे साथ सारी बहन का हिम्मत है, और यह संगठन हम लोग शुरू से ही संगठन के साथ काम करते हैं, अगर संगठन नहीं तो कुछ नहीं। हम लोग संगठन के साथ काम किए, और हमारा सारे बहन के साथ हमारा हिम्मत है, और यदि हम कोई बहन अगर कंपनी कहीं भी खड़ा कर रही है तो हम वहां पर उन्हें अच्छा राय दे सकते हैं, ये हमारा कॉन्फिडेंस है। ये सारा चीज हम झेले हैं, स्टेप बाय स्टेप हम झेले हैं, इसलिए हम कंठस्थ हैं कि हम अपने आप को, कोई भी बहन कंपनी खड़ा कर रही है तो उन्हें एक मॉडल दे सके, बता सके कि आप ऐसे करो, कम पैसे में कैसे होगा, उसको हम अपना सजेशन दे सके, ये हमारा कॉन्फिडेंस है।
Thank you. So this is to our audience that if you want to see a really women-driven, successful farmer-producer organization, do reach out to us and Punam Di for Karnabhumi Farmer-Producer Organization. There is a model right there. Ribu, coming to you, your final comments. How do you want to join all the dots together?
Such brilliant stories. And I see Punam, I mean, so much of energy and so much of confidence, which I don't see in a lot of them that we are working with currently. I mean, I would love for Punam to come and speak at one of those events where, you know, she can motivate those women. Brilliant conversations. I think two key takeaways for me from this entire discussion is, one is kind of creating an environment to get all these together into one platform. And the second one is about enablement. And this is, I think, where the corporates can step in to enable this entire thing to go forward. So these are two takeaways for me for certain, Ranjana.
Thank you. So I would not, dare to sum up or, articulate the fantastic deliberations that all of you made. All I can say is a very happy Women's Day tomorrow. But what I am taking away is this fantastic conversation that 4 lovely women from various sectors, and this has been one, trust me, one of its kind webinar जो हम कई दिनों से organize करने की कोशिश कर रहे थे, where we get representative from all the sectors, जहाँ पूनम दी जैसे grassroot leader आए, corporate representation आए, academics से आए, जहाँ हम खुला बातचीत कर सके, where we talk really what is the crux of the issue. एक हद पे फीमेल लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन नीचे जा रहा है, वहाँ एक बहुत नेगेटिव छवि है. इट्स अ वेरी ग्रिम सिचुएशन एंड वी आर अनेबल टू गेट बैक वुमेन इनटू द labor market. But at the same time, whether the labor market or the workspaces are becoming safe for women, that's also a question. Yet we have very good examples of women-led enterprise. Some have really shown good results in terms of income enhancement. Some have given good results of, not only income enhancement, but also challenging social norms. But now, as Rosa also rightly pointed out, we somewhere need to really layer in how do we take care of the care sector. That if women have to come and join labor force, who takes care of the household? Or is it her own responsibility? That's another question she has also put forth. So there is then a larger responsibility for all of us. It's not only Oxfam, not only Karnabhumi alone, not only the corporate alone or an academic sector, but a larger visioning should be that how do we all come together? हम सब कैसे आके एक comprehensive model बनाए where women find a safe space to, exercise and demonstrate their leadership and create, as we say, very feminist enterprise, which does its own business, but in her own terms. So I would end here with a thank you to all of you and the lovely audience who have joined us. And once again, since we are doing it on the eve of International Women's Day, Happy Women's Day. And together, our message is that we build back better and much more sustainable. So with that note, thank you so much. And to all my panelists, I'll reach out to you again, once again, individually to extend my warm thank you. So,
हमारे तरफ से भी, कर्णभूमि के तरफ से भी, सारी बहन के तरफ से भी, आप सभी को भी महिला दिवस का शुभ बधाई हो सबको कल के लिए.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Archana.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we
Happy
can log off.
Women's Day, everybody. Yeah.
Happy Women's
Bye bye.